It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogside Network, the show where we look at the dollars and the cents and the corporate conglomeration of the sports media business industrial complex in all its singularity. How you doing today, Steve?
I am doing very well, thank you. And my our third partner on the show is right here, who moments ago was whining by the window. So we'll see if Kobe the dog has anything else to say. But other than that, I'm doing very well. We're in a heat wave down here, which isn't surprising given that it's South Texas.
Oh, really? It's actually been a little bit unseasonably chill in the mid-Atlantic.
No, yeah, it's pretty hot. Are there any good shows coming up that you're going to, Chris?
No, not really. I don't think I have any. Well, that's actually not true. I'm going to see Neil Young in a couple weeks at the Woodstock site, which is now like a outdoor shed style amphitheater at Bethel Woods. So that'll be fun.
Neil Young is one of those guys. So I like his music, but he's so political. I can't take him, and I don't want to give him money to go to a show.
That doesn't bother me.
Well, that's because you're on his side.
Yeah.
That's why it doesn't bother you. I don't want to get preached at by the guy. Much like
Yes.
you would not go see Kid Rock. I'm not going to go see Neil Young.
Uh, that's fair, except the artistic output is heavily favored in one direction.
Oh well, yeah, Kid Rock. I love Kid Rock. I love his music,
There is no metric which you would say his artistic output is greater than Neil Young's.
except that I would say his artistic output is greater than Neil Young's. He's a glorified. And again, I like him. I'm not bashing him musically, but he is a glorified folk singer, whereas Kid Rock has done all kinds of things. He's got great songs.
That is just ridiculous, and we probably will bore everyone debating something that is like not even worth debating.
I refuse. I will not concede this. We can stop arguing about it, but I will not concede this. This is because I am right.
You know who would also agree with me?
Who?
Kid Rock.
I don't know about that.
He would. He would.
Do you know him? Have you asked him this question?
No, but I would bet you dollars to donuts if we did. He would say, in the universal scale of greater artistic output, yes, Neil Young has produced more than me.
If only for him to be typically humble. I mean, he's a humble guy.
Yeah, okay.
Well, is it that? I mean, he's certainly a humble dude, well aware of his place in the universe, I would say.
All right. Well, yes, the Saint Kid Rock. That's why he would agree with me.
I do love his music though, and I do think he's better than Neil Young. I mean, and again, I like Neil Young, but you get past rocking in the free world, and it's most like 60s, 70s folk style stuff, and that's not really my speed, although I
He
appreciate it.
Steve, he literally got kicked off his own record label for making un-Neil Young like records.
I get it, but it's
But I
okay.
mean, he was fired for not making typical records.
I get it, but it's not as hard edged as I would want. Rocking in the free world, like the electric version, that's way better than the acoustic version.
Do you know that he also released an entire album of just noise, feedback noise from that tour?
Who would want to listen to that?
Doesn't matter. You said non-experimental, doing the same thing.
I'd said nothing about
Yes.
experimental.
No, you said he
I,
does only one thing.
I said he's known for typically being to me
No, known for an artistic output are two way different things.
he is again like a post folk at heart. He's done some other thing, and he had Pearl Jam as his backing band at one point in time. I'm not saying he's not done other things, but I think at this very core, that's what he is. That's what I'm saying.
Mm. That is actually the
But Kid Rock is better.
This is so absurd. This is so absolutely 100% lunatic
Look,
absurd.
anybody out there who knows the truth and agrees with me, please speak up.
The silence is deafening. All
Well,
right.
they can't speak during the show, Chris. I'm saying, please, the people who are listening, tweet at us or tweet at the Hog site and tell us what you think. And I'm confident that I'll be right. Kid Rock is better than Neil Young.
That is okay.
If you take politics out
You
of it,
do.
because you have, I'm sure you have a negative view of him because of his politics. Because
No,
he's,
I don't even, by the way, I've known about Kid Rock's career since as a rapper from the early mid 90s. So I am aware of Kid Rock's oeuvre.
I don't know how you can say he's not better than Neil Young then.
I wish I had somebody with a big enough platform to put this question out to get anywhere a statistical data reading. Uh, but I think that's going to be a tough one for you to win in any universe or scenario.
Listen, I will go down swinging on this one.
All right. Crazy. Absolutely insane. Um,
Should we transition to sports?
yes, because although you have now under basically put in any opinion you come out here in question, but yes, let's move to sports. So big week for ESPN, Steve, one of your favorites. Um, they seem to have acquired most of live sports at this point, or at least have made a strategic play to do that. Some pretty huge deals. One involving the NFL, one involving WWE, and all involving some real implications on the future of sports on screens.
Yeah, well, let's start with the NFL because that's to me the most interesting one. um, so ESPN and the NFL announced that they are now in the process of selling to ESPN the trademark RedZone and the channel. It's including them having
Yeah, all
rights to
NFL
the
media
channel.
properties.
And I wasn't 100% sure if it's all NFL media properties
Yes,
or if
it's the stream games that would have been on the NFL network, all programming on the NFL network and the
well in the
NFL
fan
Red Zone.
in the fantasy in the
Yes,
NFL
plus the
fantasy
fantasy, but I'm
rights.
not even
Yeah.
counting that as NFL media. I'm counting NFL media was their broadcast channel and all content on that, their ability to have, X amount of games every year and Red Zone,
And
plus fantasy.
I think the biggest deal out of all of that is that they're going to own the trademark red zone because what has been speculated about and I guess said in open media now is that they're going to start they're using the red zone label for other sports. So you'll have you hypothetically could have the red zone college football channel and whatever major National Basketball Association rights they have, you could put red zone on that, although they don't have a ton of NBA rights. Um, but interestingly, the NFL will continue to produce the NFL Network um, content and be responsible for like the technical production of it. But ESPN will own it all. And where the reason why I think this is interesting is that all of this is geared towards promoting ESPN's paid subscriber service that's about to come out in like a month or two. And so I think because they're spending a fortune on this. And by the way, what even more strange is the NFL is going to end up with a 10% equity stake in ESPN. And so that's part of the consideration. So ESPN probably paid the NFL some money. And then the NFL also got a 10% equity stake, which has some amount of value. Now, Disney owns ESPN. And so this deal involved Disney too, because Disney is the one that technically owned all the stock in ESPN. And yes, it's merging the fantasy product, and so the NFL fantasy is basically going to go away more or less, and it'll be that ESPN's fantasy football is the NFL's official fantasy football game, and so this is like a long-term play for ESPN to one maintain their relevance, but more importantly, kind of set up the future of their broadcast streaming and making it more accessible, not more accessible, more palatable for subscribers. That's
And
why they're doing it now.
yeah, they're definitely pumping up the offerings that they can have on the direct to consumer ESPN app, which they correctly are just calling ESPN. So yes, all of this stuff is just to beef up, and that's why I think things like I don't diminish the idea of like picking up the NFL Network and its programming because these are the kind of things in a long tail approach that are going to attract more and keep more subscribers over time, right? Because you can only if you're only giving people a game of the week or a couple games of the week, it gets harder to start to explain why you would pay for that. So they need just like ESPN on your cable package, they need wall to wall content. It may not be scheduled like a traditional TV, but they need libraries of content, and they'll also have it at set times and capture that audience as well. But it's live and archive, and they need a huge corpus of content to keep that beast fed, which we'll even talk about a little bit more with the WWE because that's the same strategy and motivation. I think there's a couple things in here that are well. One, what we didn't also mention was that this also means that the NFL, the Shield, owns 10% equity in
Yeah,
ESPN
that's
Disney.
yeah, right. Because it has to be. It's they're buying it from Disney, not ESPN. ESPN is in a separate
Yeah,
corporation
no.
anymore.
So, but that's a big part of this as well. So we've got hooks
There's
on both
almost
sides.
certainly cash going to NFL, but part of the consideration is this 10% equity, which is valued at whatever it's valued at, which we don't know.
Yeah, and will fluctuate. The other thing I think is actually pretty important here, and is those NFL network licensed games now become properties of that over the direct to consumer subscription. So you now have just because if anyone's tried to watch like a game from Europe or whatever, and suddenly like went to their remote control and like where the hell is this game? They generally the answer to that usually was on the NFL Network, which lots of people don't have, right? So or it's an add-on or whatever. So every every time there was that Sunday morning, people were like, "How the hell do I watch this game from England or whatever?" Now the answer would be you'd watch it on your
ESPN.
ESPN app. So it also greatly expands ESPN's live games. And that's why I think this actually forces the hand even more with the coming the opt out by the NFL and the media deal. This actually makes the opt out more attractive to the media buyers because right now, like ESPN just like somehow got like magical more games on their
A
service.
lot more games.
Yeah, I'm not even counting the red zone there. I'm just counting again
No, I know
those
you are.
games that
I'm about
are
to.
licensed.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, we're reading this on ESPN itself. ESPN to get NFL Network rights to RedZone from NFL for equity stake on Bay, dated August 5th. It's uncredited in terms of author, but this article here it says that the ESPN platforms are going to license 3 additional NFL games per season as part of this deal, giving them a total of 28. So they're going to have a total of 28 games to be broadcast exclusively on ESPN platforms. And then the NFL network, of course, and the Red Zone channel will have rights to all of them. And so yeah, I think it has a tremendous impact on the upcoming media rights negotiation. That means Fox and CBS will have to probably put dramatically more money up to be more palatable and more appetizing to the NFL, which is just pumped up ESPN as its primary partner. You
Yeah,
know,
and
which
it
is
gets
which is different than anything. They've always had network partners be their primary, and that's not the case anymore.
and I might be Don Quixote against the windmill here on this one, but I really the amount of corporate vertical integration here and who owns what and what is the editorial separation, which is not a problem endemic to just sports, but sports is often a cute example of larger trends and sometimes the most lucrative versions of those as well. I really don't like that I mean, this idea, this coming together of the league owning its own media and having at minimum having a thumb, a big toe, a couple pinkies on the scale here is I don't know. I mean, I know, like I said, I've lost the battle and like the game is up, but I don't like it. I think it's problematic, and I think I don't know. It's a big chunk of the integrity to me.
You mean problematic in the sense that the NFL has one massive partner and a bunch of sideshows? Is that what you think is
Well,
a
and then
problem?
it can controls the narrative, right? Like it
Yes.
owns the league and enough, enough actual ownership and then enough influence to talk about how the league is, is sold, talked about, marketed, what narratives rise. I mean, there's legitimate issues in the world of professional football that needs independent editorial, doesn't need league-driven giant media conglomerates to
Well,
tell its story.
along those lines, I think the weirdest part about this is that the NFL going to own 10% of equity stake in ESPN. That
Yeah,
is really
totally.
strange, and I
Yeah.
think it's so. Now, I've not been a fan of ESPN for a long time in terms of their content, their non-live game content. But point is, what you just said, I think is relevant, which is, that who's going to be objective here? What is the narrative going to be if the NFL literally owns a stake? We saw this in Washington. Dan Snyder owned what was the radio
Red
station?
Zebra
Yeah,
and then
right.
980.
Yeah, and in part, Dan Snyder, so it appeared, occasionally dictated the narrative and the people who were saying it. So is the NFL going to allow unbiased criticism of the league when they do something worthy of criticism? I think that's really what you're getting at,
Yeah,
right?
totally. And
And
the
that's
other media companies who want in are going to acquiesce, kind of, without even being asked to because they want
because
to
they
be
have
lined
to.
up. Yeah. So it's not even just the sort of like official relationship between the NFL and ESPN, but then it's also what it does to that larger media ecosystem. Listen, like NFL Network, we understood that they were owned by the NFL, right? Like that was
It
overt.
was advertised and
Yeah,
it
at
was
least
as the NFL's network. Right.
yeah, now what they've done is they basically are going to turn all that programming and content, blah, 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 and put the ESPN brand in front of it, which is supposed to then sort of falsely, at this point, denote some kind of editorial neutrality here or some kind of independent. Listen, ESPN has earned that reputation over decades and decades of doing high quality sports reporting. Like that's unequivocal. So you put a brand like that, especially with a bunch of normies, and they're going to assume that there's kind of these editorial layers of separation, or that this is a news reporting outfit, which ESPN has been through the majority of its decades. This puts that in deep question for me, at least on the NFL.
Well, yeah, because the average person's not going to understand any of this,
No,
or at least
but they do
not
understand.
have.
Oh, ESPN, they report independently on news.
Yeah,
That would be a general observation.
I've gotten sick of ESPN recently because to me it's just gotten too political and too nonsensical, and I think they got rid of a lot of their good quality reporters for a bunch of people who aren't. And so I haven't bought into the ESPN narrative for several years now, probably 3, 4, 5 years at least. But that's just me, and I think that for the most part, ESPN still has that reputation as being the kingpin, for lack of a better term, of unbiased reporting. And yeah, I think it calls into question the NFL is. I mean, I'm okay if the NFL wants to sell the RedZone trademark to ESPN. I don't necessarily think there's a problem with that.
No, that to me is
Um,
a media deal. Yeah,
right, but the equity stake part, I think, is problematic.
yeah.
It really
Their
is.
fortunes are now tied together
Yes,
explicitly.
and are they going to be unbiased when the NFL does something worthy of criticism? Are they going to be afraid to say it? And if some loudmouth reporter on ESPN actually does say it, is the NFL going to criticize them, whether publicly or privately?
There's already
If Stephen A.
examples.
Smith says something, what is it going to be okay?
Yeah, I would say probably no. Now, are they going to pick a battle in the next 12 to 18 months? Maybe not. Maybe they'll be chill for a while because they don't want to, completely stoke that
Eventually,
reputation.
it's going to happen, though.
But yeah, you track this over years, and especially in those years, they take even closer steps to each other. Then
Like
I think over time you're going to see it.
who's the punter that has the podcast? What's his name?
The
The Colts, the former
oh,
Colts.
oh yeah, the punter. Yeah, what is? Oh my God, I can't believe I can't think of his name.
Yeah, and now we're gonna have to look it up here because like a guy like what I'm getting at is a guy like that is is somebody who's going to do it. Colts punter with podcast.
This
Pat
okay.
McAfee.
Yeah,
Pat
Ted.
Mc.
Yeah, yeah. You got to cut that, Steve. Um,
No, we don't edit. Listen, we
yeah.
forgot his name.
We're we're approaching older middle age, so give us a break.
But point is,
Um,
like a guy like Pat McAfee, who's probably the most likely to mouth off about something, isn't he still with ESPN?
yeah,
Uh,
although he has some weird things in his contracts where he has some steps in between, but yes,
yeah,
he's a perfect candidate for. Now he's at ultimately ended up, he
he's acquiesced
stokes
a
the
little bit.
bad guy
Yeah,
vibe because that's his brand. But in the end, he's pretty, with the Adam Schefters and paying people to be on his show. He actually, so he actually toes the party line and then picks dumb fights to show that he's a rebel.
yeah, no, that's probably fair. But there's going to be somebody out there at some point on ESPN.
Who steps over the line?
Yes, and then what happens?
Right.
And then what happens? Because the NFL is not impervious to criticism in any way, and I get it. It's a financial deal, and frankly, Disney could use the equity injection, in this, because Disney's losing a fortune in many respects. But
That's actually not true, Steve. I actually looked this up because I anticipated your line of
well,
dialogue here.
Disney's movies
They're
have
about
lost a
they're
fortune.
about to, there's the financial progress is good. The parks are back up. The streaming services are going gangbuster. The movies are doing okay. Not could be
Movies,
doing
there's
better.
been
But
the
their earnings
movies are
report
good.
just came out, and they're all indicators are positive.
When did the earnings report come out?
Yes, like on the fourth.
I have not seen it.
I
I'll
know.
take your word for it. But their movies have been atrocious, and they've had huge bombs in the box office.
What's the last bomb?
Well, been a couple recently. There's
Which
been
ones?
the Indiana Jones was a huge bomb that
That was
lost
like
hundreds of millions of dollars.
2022,
No, no,
2023.
no, 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 no. That was not 2022.
Let's go to the videotape.
Let's see. And drum roll, please.
Are you talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of
That
Destiny?
one, yeah. What was it?
2023.
23. Okay, so it wasn't 22. So it was 2 years ago. I thought it was 1 year ago. It was really 2 years ago. Fair enough. But point is, their movies are not doing all that well in the box office. Yes, the parks took a downturn because of COVID mostly, and that's I'm sure has returned. ESPN, from what I've always understood, is the most profitable part of the company.
Most of the
And they
financial
lost that hotel,
most of
bomb
the
and so
financial
on.
reporting from their recent earnings, which they timed the announcements of the WWE and the
Of
ESPN
course, to their
news,
earnings reports, right?
yes,
Of
as
course.
positive momentum, but all of the financial overview articles cite parks streaming services as the leader in their emergence, and which we've talked about a little bit in a different version of this conversation, some stabilization in cable.
Some stabilization cable. But point is, like, this, I think, is a good thing for Disney because they have a partner that's not going anywhere. The ESPN, NFL seem to be impervious to criticism, doesn't it? NFL could do almost anything and nothing affects their ratings. It seems like they've been Teflon so far. At some point, they're going to get to a point where they take a step too far at some point in terms of marketing or some other thing. But right now, they can do nothing wrong. It seems.
Considering that they just had 7 million people watch the Hall of Fame game in mid late
Which
July.
is always the worst game of the year. I didn't watch it.
I know, but I'm just saying 7 million people
Yeah, I
watched a
know. That's my
worthless
point.
game in
Yeah.
a, high school football field.
That's my point. I mean, the NFL can do absolutely no wrong. What I've always said about the NFL is I think if I were them, what I'd be worried about is oversaturation. And this ESPN deal may be part of it. To me, what it was special about the NFL and what really brought them to prominence was that they owned Sunday. They own Sunday, and now the game is spread from Sunday afternoon to Sunday morning through Sunday evening, Monday, Thursday, and sometimes Saturday. Along with the network, and now they're in ESPN. And at some point, I think it's going to be oversaturation. I
They're
don't know when,
gonna
but at some
they're
point.
gonna need the EMT medics to pry their fused burnt hand from the stovetop
Oh, I know. Oh,
before they
absolutely.
take any warning signs. So I mean, I think the only way that stunts their own version of Manifest Destiny here is actually taking a pretty big punch to the
That's
nose.
what I'm saying,
And
and it's going to happen at some point.
it might, but they'll be printing money until then.
Probably, but I'm rooting for ESPN to go down in flames because they're a bunch of you know, liberal punks. So I don't like him. I don't subscribe to Disney for that for political reasons. I don't literally subscribe to the streaming service for political reasons.
It is going to be yeah, we know. It's going to be a high cost. It's $29.99.
Is that really
That's
that
a
high though?
Well, yeah, if you could compare it to any other streaming service, which is,
Because
maybe
what Netflix is what 15, 16
I
a
think
month,
Netflix is now I think the most expensive Netflix is like maybe pushing $25.
right?
And
It,
that's with all kinds of like,
now
no
you know it's.
commercials, etc.
I think we need to go back to the venue argument because if you guys recall that we did a story of 2 or 3 months ago on venue, which was the idea of basically all the non ESPN sports networks to band together and start a streaming outlet. That the deal fell apart and it didn't never happened. And at the time, we said ESPN's got to get their act together, basically, and do something. Well, guess what's happened? ESPN did, and then Venue fell apart, and so ESPN has now positioned itself to be the premier and only sports streaming service that people will need going forward. So if they if they can get back in the good graces of Major League Baseball and in the NBA and have this sort of red zone sports aggregate thing going for all of them, it could be their network of choice.
It'll certainly be something that you have to have, even if stuff is spread out over a couple, which does bring up an interesting point that we read an article about. I think that was in Front Office Sports, I believe, um, about what expanding to your point, Steve, expanding the use of the red zone concept and brand. Now, that would the next time it's used outside the NFL will not be the first time. It was used to great success for the gold zone in the last Summer Olympics and is planned for the upcoming Winter Olympics. So
Successfully, I might add.
yeah, no, I'm saying definitely. So they've already test driven in a different, and they even use the same Scott Hansen, they use the same host and some of the same vibes and same production look and feel. So it has already worked, but you're going to see it all over the place. But the idea of college football, which makes the most sense, just like, kind of at the surface level, the difference in complexity between the NFL, which is, all for one for all, they can sell their rights as a collective, and the conference system in
It's
college
pretty
football
monumental.
is crazy. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to do a college red zone, right now ESPN could only do it with their owned games, and they don't have the Big Ten. So they have a lot, right? So you could actually probably still do a dynamic product or
But it's
do
not going to be everything because they don't have
right. And you'd
everything.
almost want to do it conference specific, right? You'd almost want to have, I'd rather have the SEC red zone than have the college football red zone except these games.
Well, there's too many to have one channel, with all of them. It's just too broad in scale. So, yeah, our front office sports, the memo has this dated August 8th, called a college football red zone is an ESPN gold mine in theory. It's uncredited. No, it's not uncredited. It's Amanda Kristovich, Michael McCarthy, Colin Saleo, and Ben Horney. And by the way, this column does say that the 10% stake in ESPN is worth an estimated 2.5 billion to put some numbers on it. So there you go. And so obviously then that puts ESPN's net worth at 25 billion, according to wherever they got this, just incidentally. But yeah, so the point here is they can have a college football red zone, but they do have rights to the SEC. They have extensive and non-exclusive rights to the Big 12, the American Conference, Sun Belt, Mid American, and more. But yeah, without the Big 10, um, it's not complete. It's not going to be complete. And like Notre Dame is with NBC, and they've been forever. It's probably not going to change. So they could do like SEC Red Zone. I don't know if I don't know if any of the other networks or conferences rather would really be worth a dedicated Red Zone channel. The
The Big
SEC,
Ten, which
yes.
they don't have.
Right. Yeah, I'm talking about what they own though.
Yeah.
So you can almost do SEC and then everybody else, you know.
I guess it depends on what, well, it depends because this really is, they don't have to worry about the individual sale as much because they're aggregating, right? So, like, if you're just trying to get someone to cross the line for 29.99 a month, then you could say, well, we're gonna have SEC red zone and ACC red zone.
Well, this is the point. Absolutely, of
Right.
course.
So, and there's enough. If in a bundle, there's enough ACC fans there that would help to motivate them to do that monthly subscription, especially with the whole other bouquet of offerings, which we've already sort of discussed. Then that adds to that. It's a bulk play, right?
My point is you can't have one of those for every single conference. This is my point.
No, but
There maybe there's
you could do
another
that,
one that needs
or
that
they
could
just do
run.
the everybody else red zone. I mean, there's definitely ways to do it.
Yeah, the varsity and the non-varsity and the
Yeah,
junior varsity
basically.
red
And there
zone.
would
Yeah.
still be enough fans there that may push over to getting subscription or just getting
I just think
subscription
there's
through
too many
college football season.
games to have all in one.
No, you'd have to segment it in some way. But
Yeah.
that's easy enough. You just have channel 101, 102, 103, and you bounce back between those red
No, I mean,
zones.
of course, channel, but you have to figure out what structure fits the best because
Yeah.
you're not going to have like a Mid America Conference red zone and have more than three people ever watching it.
The articles talked about that, would there be enough of a fan base to attract to that truncated, that only ESPN licensed games red zone model, however you do it? And I tend to think the answer is probably yes. If I was if I was internal to ESPN, like, no, would I love to have the Big Ten? Of course, but I would rather
They've got
have
enough.
years of traction of doing just the ones we have, so that it actually makes the Big Ten walk your way, where they almost want to be in your party, not worrying about whether they're at your party.
ESPN has I think they don't have a more extensive level of rights into any sport than they do college football. I mean, ESPN has a lot of rights in college football because the column here talks about it a little bit. And again, I just read it. They've got SEC, ACC, most ACC games, extensive rights in Big 12, American, Sun Belt, Mid American, and more. So they have a huge. They could do in a multiple entire channels dedicated to just college football, which is exactly what we're talking about. Red Zone. Now the problem, of course, obviously is, and it's the same for the NFL red zone for that matter. What are you going to play Monday through Friday? I guess repeat games and have five people watch them, I guess. I don't know I've never been a subscriber to the red zone because my famous cheapness doesn't allow me to pay for something when I already have cable TV. So I don't know what the red zone does during the week or on Saturdays.
Well, it just goes dark because
Oh, it
it's like,
does.
yeah, or they just, to your point, they just rerun games, but even that, then when it's not the red zone, which is obviously only, Sunday afternoons, because they don't do red zone for a Monday night game or something like that. It's
Right.
ridiculous. So it has a very small window in which it's on. It's just basically an auxiliary channel to the NFL network. So they actually don't want, they just send you the NFL network, so it's like, he says,
So the
see you
point is,
next,
you
see you
answered
next
it.
Sunday,
So it goes dark.
yeah. Or,
So that's
or,
what
and,
this would
or
do
they
too.
repeat games.
Yeah, so that's what this would do too. Well, it almost would be almost cost ineffective at some point to just keep repeating games ad nauseum. So yeah, going dark one just might be the best thing for it.
Yeah, it's a
Keep production
specialized,
costs
it's a
down. Yeah,
one use channel type thing. So I
yeah.
think they would just do that and then drive people to their more centralized broadcast. But this is so if this is exactly what the sales team is discussing at ESPN Disney is, all right. So how do we get people? Because $30 is a chunk of change when someone's already paying, and look, a lot of people are still paying cable. They're still paying for a la carte streamers, and then you're asking them on top of that to pay $30. So they basically, that offering has to say, hey, you get a ton of live games across these properties. You get, access to, top level, kind of studio shows and talking head shows. And, you get a library of, basically of things going back decades, things like 30 for 30 or old programs or watching sports documentaries. So you also get a library approach, and that's what they have to put together and say, hey, what is going to move X number of people across the $30 a month threshold.
Now, what's interesting here is that the front office sports column, the ESPN column didn't mention this. Front office sports column mentions the possibility of antitrust problems in here. They're not citing anything specific, but it does say, to quote this thing, antitrust regulators or President Donald Trump himself could intervene. Gaining regulatory approval from the federal government will likely take a year or more, with Disney's CFO saying Wednesday he didn't expect the deal to close until the end of 2026. Now, to be fair, I don't think Trump has said boo about this yet. I mean, he may in a late night tweet storm or something at some point, but
Well, I think even if you take the Trump viability out of it, this kind of deal was always going to go through some kind of
yes.
federal review. And so I think, take all names, ideologies out of the political situation, federal government, and this is still going to, a year is the absolutely rosy, pooping rainbows unicorn version of how long this would take
These
to get
kind of
done.
deals, I don't do these kind of deals in my legal world. I mean, I do dirt, but this kind of deal is always going to take
Yeah,
long time to
year
get.
minimum.
And the point of the antitrust regulations, generally speaking, is to ensure that there's fair competition. It doesn't mean that there can't be large, powerful companies involved in a market. It means that the government wants to make sure they're not squashing competition. And in this case, that's not what ESPN is doing. I don't think this is an antitrust problem.
No, but and I just think some of these reporters are just throwing things out there. But I think
Yeah,
the
this just
real
kind of
story
came
is
out of
it's going to have to
nowhere.
go through multi-level reviews from lots of government bodies, and the idea that this is going to affect your upcoming RedZone experience for the 2025 football season that's about to kick off in September. The answer is no.
Well, and Disney is a publicly traded company, and so then you're talking about SEC regulation, here, and so yeah, there's multiple layers of federal review I think involved here, but this just doesn't smack of an antitrust problem. When the NFL has multiple partners who are all broadcasting games, college football, which is not one entity, has a bunch of different partners broadcasting games. I don't think in this case, I think you probably said it right. This is just the front office sports people throwing crap out just to mention it, to look smart, probably. Um, yeah. Oh, and to be clear, I don't know if we said this up front, but what has happened here is they're sold the trademark. The NFL has sold the trademark Red Zone, just to be clear. Um, and if we can finish this up by saying, let's see, NFL Chief Operating Officer Hans Schroeder told Front Office Sports, certainly you could see different red zones with different sports. They could certainly build out the red zone channel to be more than 7 hours a week if they wanted to. So that's what we're talking about here. So because college football isn't, some games are on Saturday, or, most games are, some games are Fridays, occasional Wednesday.
Yeah, but if you
There
had,
could
goal zone or hoop zone or whatever of those, then you do have, home base, home base zone. Then you do have Monday, Tuesday,
basketball and
Wednesday,
baseball is the
Thursday.
one they really need to get
Yeah, so
a
yeah,
zone,
you
red
just get
zone.
those sports that play, they play three times minimum out of a week, and then you get, then you basically get the Sunday afternoon experience that populates across the whole week. That would be their ultimate goal. They did talk about, because all of these media companies share some level, right? Like you can do a look in for like an update. So if you're watching, a Fox game and the Bills are playing on what would be NBC, then they have negotiated what it's like to show Josh Allen break a tackle and run for a touchdown on a game break or whatever. So they already have that. But the red zone, Steve, I know you just said you're not a customer.
No.
I am. And so especially when you're watching the 4 o'clock games, which sometimes is only as few as 3 games, especially with how many games are
Well,
now being.
especially in late in the year when
Yeah,
they're doing Saturday night games.
right. So you're basically watching all 3 games with no commercials. That's the other thing we haven't mentioned. This pretty much guarantees that they find more ways to interject ads and commercials into the experience. Because one of the great things about Red Zone is you don't see a commercial. You can
Well,
watch football all day and not see a commercial.
I'm not saying that it's not a good idea. I'm saying that I'm too cheap to pay for
No,
it.
no, yes, I understand. I'm just saying, like one of its biggest selling points. Anybody I know that watches a lot of it is like it's the greatest thing. You see every play and you see no commercials. Who
No,
wouldn't
I
take that trade? And but
yeah.
now you're going to see, which they were already thinking that you could already see, like some Scott Hansen doing some live reads and stuff like that. So they were already thinking about this. But I think this guarantees in this zone concept, you see ads at a much larger clip.
Now I do watch Major League Baseball Network at night sometimes. And
Do they have quad box things?
well, no, but they will check in. They'll do a live
Yeah.
check in to some games. But then at some point, they'll just show one game in its entirety. It is not a true red zone where they're doing, monitoring all the time. But they do check in sometimes when something big is going on.
Yeah, and so those check-ins usually are dominated by they can't be longer than 90 seconds or
Yes,
whatever the
something like that.
pre-negotiated
Yeah.
stuff is. But any kind of these red zones, like I said, you're basically at that 4 o'clock window, you're just basing watching the entire game of those three games.
Because the interesting part is that Fox and CBS have broadcast rights to these games. However, RedZone, owned by NFL Media, has the right to do however long the check-ins are, and so Fox and CBS don't have exclusive rights. They're going to be immensely. I think they're okay with it if the NFL is doing it on their own channels. I would venture a guess that they're going to be immensely unhappy that ESPN is now the one that can do check-ins on their very broadcast when they're their competitors. Because I don't think they view the NFL Network as a true competitor. It's the NFL's private media thing, but I bet you Fox and CBS are going to really be ticked off about
Oh,
this.
I think yes, they are already ticked off, I think for sure. And they're going to pick these fights where they can on a bunch of these kind of issues. Yeah, this is, NFL definitely made ESPN the kingmaker, and it takes a bunch of production costs off the NFL's. This also means that they're not necessarily, maybe not,
Well,
like I
the
said,
NFL is going
next
to be
year.
producing all this stuff
Yeah,
still,
yeah. It
though.
also is like it's they keep all their branding and lose the headache of actually being a media company, which I think the sort of low key thing here is the NFL wanted out of being a production based media company.
Because it's not really their thing.
No, and it's a lot of overhead.
People kind of forget that the NFL isn't really a company. It's at
A
the heart of it.
collective.
At the heart of it, it's a Karl Marx style collective of a bunch of owners that own teams, and those owners then have formed tangential corporations like the NFL merchandising company is one, NFL media is one. There's NFL charities is another thing that's it's nonprofit that somebody's working it. Kobe is strongly disagreeing with me here, but yeah, I mean I think they do probably want to get out of broadcast. This is not their thing.
No. And this is the best exit path for them, 100%. This makes a lot of sense for the NFL. This is a no-brainer for the NFL, in my opinion.
It's just they pissed off their other partners.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
that they care because
but
they're
they'll
getting paid.
heal.
Yeah,
They'll figure it out by paying more money.
it's
Um,
basically they traded in one girlfriend for a hotter girlfriend,
and
and
kept
then
both.
yeah, right, and to the chagrin of the spurned girlfriend.
The NFL is poly. They're in a throuple.
Exactly, a
Um,
throuple. Oh my god, kind of. Except there's one who's the principal, who's the main. There was one that
yeah,
gets
yeah.
to sleep in the master bedroom.
There's always hierarchy, Steve.
The other ones have to sleep in the spare bedrooms.
Yeah, right. Um, Big Love reboot. One last thing on this kind of sort of topic. I know we're kind of belaboring it, but it is the major thing. Actually, two more things. One is we've hinted at it, but this WWE deal isn't small either for ESPN. And another
It's pretty
key,
enormous, actually.
yeah, a pretty key piece of what is obviously their get people to spend $30 strategy in that they linked a deal that I think gets them 10 to 12, but basically the premium live events, what they call PLEs, it basically gives ESPN exclusive rights to now to basically WrestleMania, which is the one everyone kind of know, this regular big premium event. But the reality is the WWE has nurtured three, five, seven more of these kind of yearly events, and I'm not gonna have all the names right in front of me, but
I got him.
yeah. But so now ESPN and will be where you would need to get. You'd need to buy that $30 a month subscription to see your, Royal Rumbles and your WrestleManias and your Hog Tie Death Match 11s and whatever.
And am I wrong in thinking that originally the term ESPN is supposed to be entertainment and sports? Is
Yes.
that what? Yeah, because obviously WWE isn't actual sports because it's written,
Yeah.
performed entertainment.
Although they
It's
did have wrestling and they have had a history of broadcasting wrestling going back to those we just have to fill time years of early ESPN. So there is some history there.
sorry, Kobe really, really doesn't like wrestling, as you can hear.
He's a big Triple H fan.
He is, I guess. I think what's actually literally happened is he's seeing a dog outside the window. It's going crazy. So I apologize for this. Um, okay, so have this on CNBC Sports. ESPN Inc.'s 5-year deal for WWE's live premium events, including WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, by Alex Sherman. Sometimes I think we're the Alex Sherman network because we do so many of his stories. So what has happened here is ESPN has paid TKO, which is WWE's corporate owner, $325 million a year for 5 years, and in exchange, they're getting what you already said, which is their premium events, which is WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and something called SummerSlam, which is so that's their three. That is their three. I think biggest, and this is going to begin in 2026. Previously, Peacock, NBC Universal's Peacock paid 180 million a year, so they almost doubled, not quite doubled, but almost doubled their income here. And so, but those three things between WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and SummerSlam, there are 10 events a year of those things. And so that is what will be on ESPN. And I think you hit it exactly right. This is another boon in the feather of the streaming service, paid service. That's why they're doing this.
And you don't pay a premium, so it's not like you have to get ESPN streaming app and then pay. A lot of people, especially older people like us that haven't paid attention to wrestling in a long time, these used to be pay-per-view events, right? You slap down $60 to your cable company and you get WrestleMania. They've actually phased that model out even before this deal, but it is important to know that you don't pay extra. You just get, right?
Yes,
so you just get the WrestleMania.
It's just going to be on the streaming service.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
and presumably ESPN's cable channel, I would assume, for that matter.
that's a good question.
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah. I actually don't know that answer to that either. But so that and some of these events, because like, does the WWE really have 10 special events? The answer is actually no. They have some of these that go multiple nights. So the Royal Rumble might be 2 or 3 nights. So it's like, but those are each counted as a live event, because they obviously are. Like WrestleMania, I think, is a 2-night event or whatever. So it's like 10 live events made up of that sort of family of brands is an interesting distinction. But the other thing too, not only did they double up from Peacock, but you might remember that Peacock, Netflix, and USA Network, which is owned by something called Verdant, they don't lose those contracts either because those are for weekly, your kind of typical, it's Saturday morning wrestling type of thing, but now in prime time. So WWE didn't have to break any for just to get ESPN exclusivity on these events. They kept all those existing media contracts.
Okay, so I've got some of the details on the story goes, the CNBC story goes into some of this. So we did this deal when it came out. The Netflix deal is 10 years, $5 billion to stream WWE Raw on Monday nights. So that's what Netflix has. And then USA Network has something called SmackDown, which airs Fridays. And yes, no, on Peacock. Okay, so SmackDown airs Fridays on USA Network and will continue to stream on Peacock. So yeah, no, those deals aren't going anywhere. And so this is a dramatic expansion of the broadcast footprint of WWE.
Yeah, it's massive. It's really,
because you're right. This used to be paid. What's the word you say?
Pay-per-view.
Yeah, pay-per-view. Right, and it's not going to be anymore.
No, and it wasn't in that earlier Peacock deal either that but basically ESPN took over from. So that isn't a brand new change, but I do think it helps a lot of people I think, wrestling fans are rabid. There's a reason. There's a reason that these folks that there's these media deals, right? These are
ESPN,
rabid fan base.
WDB has a wider platform, has a wider, a more expansive audience than you might think. Like this story mentions that 38% of their audience is women, which is kind of amazing because if I would venture a guess that the NFL and basketball and baseball are nowhere near 38% female audience. And it seems that wrestling seems to transcend all gender, race, any group you can. There's fans sort of across the spectrum, if you will, that I wouldn't expect. This story goes on to say 50% of people who attend WWE live events come with children. And so it then becomes a multi-generational thing.
It's pretty wild. No, it's got a huge
I
fan
don't
base.
get it personally. I'm really not a fan because it's not real sports, but personally, it's just entertainment. And if you want to do it, that's great. I guess.
I like wrestling, but I like more. I like wrestling like I like country music. I like the old stuff. So,
If it doesn't have loud guitars in it, generally it doesn't interest me.
the
Such as C. Neil Young. And yes, Kid
oh,
Rock is better than Neil Young. But
oh gosh, just the fact that you don't know that Neil Young has like 15 like amplifiers to 12 albums is crazy.
I
Anyway,
know what I'm saying is at the heart of him, yes, I know I'm aware he's got a bunch of those albums,
some
but
of his
at
biggest
heart,
hits are hard rock songs.
Keep on Rocking and Free World's got to be his biggest hit, right? I would think. Rocket.
No, I don't think it's his biggest hit. I think probably Heart of Gold, which actually is a folk rock song, was a way
Yes.
better, just and from a chart perspective, was a bigger hit.
And Heart of Gold's okay, but it's not my thing. Whereas like Ba with the Ba, that's my thing.
Um,
Chris is not going to concede this.
Dog agrees with me.
No, the dog was expressing his agreement with his owner. That's what happened.
No, your dog's like, are you insane?
He was barking at thunder, actually, but
If I had energy, I would put a compare and contrast playlists parallel, but who has time? Um, so yes, so WWE huge, adding to the ESPN bundle, basically that'll roll out. I think September is when the analysts are thinking you might be first able to subscribe to ESPN
yeah,
digital.
it's not coming out in a month.
Yeah.
ESPN is desperate to make this work. Obviously, you know how much money they spent just like this week alone. They spent a fortune on the NFL. They've spent a fortune on WWE. I think they know because can we be honest and say ESPN's what scope and ratings and kind of influence on society, on sports society, has kind of waned in recent years. Isn't that fair to say? Probably. And this is I think this is their attempt to get back into the role of number one. So they spent a fortune on all these platforms.
I
Isn't
mean,
that fair?
it's undeniable that they've spent huge on live sports.
Yes.
I don't know if their influence has gone down anymore. I mean, they won out over the startups at NBC and Fox that tried to replicate them, and they held those off. Those went nowhere.
But you're talking about Fox Sports and
Yeah, FX or
NBC, whatever that.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the parent networks, their attempts at sports, 24-hour sports. And Stephen A. Smith and that dude we talked about earlier, are the biggest two things
Pat
in
McAfee.
Pat McAfee are two biggest things in sports talk. So, I mean, have they lost their influence? They haven't. I think
I mean,
I think your liberal tag. Well, I won't deny. I won't even deny that there's
they
version of
have left
truth.
leaning
But
in
that's
their
like,
content.
but since when? That's easily a 6 to 7 year ago trend. Like all the people you hated, they fired like literally like 7 years ago.
I'm just telling you that people on my side of the aisle don't respect and don't pay attention to ESPN anymore. And I
Then
think they know
you
that.
must be a numerical amount that doesn't matter.
No, the ratings for the sports. I'm not talking about people are boycotting live sports. I'm talking about people on my side of the aisle don't watch the talking head shows that they used to, and don't
Well, it's not. It's
put
not like
ESPN
Stephen A.
in.
Smith or Pat McAfee are at all. They're not. They're not even liberals.
Well, Stephen A. Smith is a Democrat, and no, he's one of the
No, he's
less.
actually. He's actually talked about running as a Republican. He's not a registered
Yeah,
Democrat.
well, I mean, I think he's not a conservative.
He
I
might
should
not be
say
a
that he's
he
not
might
a
not be a
conservative.
conservative,
But
but
all my
he.
point is, like,
But nobody paints him as the liberal brush. No one.
people on my
No
side
one
of the
thinks Stephen A.
aisle,
Smith is a liberal. He's not. He's
people,
not. Well, the one. Janelle, whatever. That's not. I mean,
Jamel Hill. So you're
who
talking
would you
about
say
Jamel
is a
Hill.
who would you say on the ESPN roster now would
Well,
be a
but
liberal?
I gave up on him years ago,
Well, then you don't
and
know.
most, but
Then you
what I'm
don't know.
telling you,
Just
what you're
admit you
not
don't know.
listening, no, what you're not hearing is that everybody on my side of the aisle has given up on ESPN, with the exception of the watching the live sports
I
years
agree
ago.
that that's what is happening, but there's no statistical quantitative evidence to show that that has mattered. It has not hurt their business. It has not
I
hurt
think it
where
has
they're
hurt their
at. It
business.
has not hurt their dominance in sports media.
Because
Find me one quantitative statistic that backs up your point. And I'll even give you the fact that they don't watch it. I'm just saying it's not moving any needle.
well, we don't have time to do that for now. I will for the next show. We will continue this because we're out of time, and I'm not going to research this live on the air. I will find it for next time because what I would venture a guess. Here's what I would guess: the ratings and the profits for the talking head shows, I would venture a guess, have shrunk. That's what I'm going to say. But again, I don't have it in front of me. But that is what I will find out for the next show, because that's what people used to. I think people in society used to pay far more attention to those shows than they do now, and it's because sports in general. People on my side of the political aisle are sick and tired of sports journalists, generally speaking, especially ESPN. That's what I'm saying.
It hasn't mattered one iota to them. And you're not even acknowledging the washing that they've especially done to over the last easily 7 to 8 years to win that audience back, and that has worked.
We're going to find out. We'll find out for next week.
I am, especially if you decouple it or have some way to statistically match it to the decline in cable. But then all you had to do is look at Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith's social and YouTube numbers. So you get the losses back on digital, for especially for those two. You ask any even semi-cognizant sports fan, and they're going to say Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith.
Oh, I agree with you there. Those two are the biggest.
So that means that then the cultural cachet of ESPN and their dominance has gone nowhere.
I vehemently disagree with you. We'll find out for next time.
Okay, we will.
Don't let me forget.
All right, Cody won't let you forget.
Kobe was expressing his support for my point.
All right, Steve, what's going on the Hog side? It's starting to ramp up, I assume.
We're getting ready for the regular season. I spent several hours yesterday doing a bunch of pre-work of game previews, written game preview columns, as is my tradition, so I don't have to do them during the season. And we've got, we're still slogging through the preseason games and all of that. But we cover all that on the Hogsty podcast and with all of our regular written content.
Real barn burner with the Patriots. That was
they got burned down.
Yeah. All right.
18.
We will see you in 2 weeks.